and they were all exceptional. They were amazing. They were incredible. And I'm going to take them up on their offer that if I bring them a newspaper. For those of you who didn't hear the show last week, I told the story about me being a newspaper boy when I was very young, and I always exchanged a fresh donut at the end of my route with the donut shop exchange it with a newspaper, and so I always had a fresh donut every morning at like 4-5 a.m. And I'm kind of spoiled when it comes to trying donuts, and so when I told that story, the gentleman that was on the show from Doe said, we don't open till I think 6 or something, but if you come and knock on the window early in the morning and bring me a paper, I will give you a donut. So I'm going to take them up on that offer. I had a lot of good compliments from people that thought that exchange with the donut shop there. I wouldn't call it a donut shop. That is a donut shop on steroids. Like, that is an incredible. Their donuts, or whatever they're called, are masterpieces, and they taste unbelievable. The other guest I had on the show was Raquel Avila, organizer from Teamsters Local 1932. And the reason why I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that show is on the same day that we had her on the show, she was so nervous because we actually had a vote count that night in Coachella Valley. And she was like, I can't believe you're putting me in this box where the day we have this vote count for something we've been working on for 9 months, I got to go on a radio show and talk about being an organizer. I had a lot of people commented on her, how she came across on the show. I think she did extremely well, and it was awesome to hear her experience. And it's funny, she came across as kind of shy, but she's just really humble. And I really think it's important for us to recognize how difficult it is to be an organizer. And we topped off that day by having a victory that night where 433 workers in Coachella Valley had decided to become Teamsters through that vote. It was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night that we finally got the election results back. And congratulations to all those workers out in the Coachella Valley and their future Teamsters. We're going to be, putting the finishing touches on certification of that here real soon. And what a great show it was to have an organizer on, talk about the complexities, the dynamics of organizing and what workers go through, and then to actually go to a vote count where there was an election being held and these workers were deciding to be union. And so the Coachella Valley Water District workers voted in favor of being Teamsters on May 15th. And congratulate. They were very excited. Great group, phenomenal group, very energetic, very, very assertive group, very proud to be Teamsters. And so, again, thank you all for all that you did in that space. So the shout-outs for this week. First one is Carlos Resendez out of Altadena South, Local 630. Want to give you a big shout-out. I was actually at an event, I think about a week and a half ago. He came up to me and said, "Hey, man, I'm listening to your show every week." He was, talked about all the cool things that he's heard, and he's sharing it with other individuals out there. And so, Carlos, I know you're listening live. Appreciate you listening to the show, and we figured we'd do a quick shout out for you. Also, I got PSD preschool services workers in Crestline listening in live. I've got a number of staff members, and we have Zenith, Kaiser, and UBS up in the Hesperia Government Center right now, literally right now, doing a site visit. They're listening live. Also have I got actually somebody texted me and was like, "You need to do a shout out for the staff at Local 1932 for listening live." So for all of you that are listening live at the staff at the local union, thanks for listening in. And I shouldn't overlook you because you guys almost all listen in live on a regular basis. And so with that, we're going to do our Think a Teamster. For those of you that don't know, you probably see, if you haven't seen our billboards, you better start looking for it, or on the side of dozens of buses all over the Inland Empire is the Think a Teamster campaign that we have launched, and we're making sure that everybody understands all the different jobs that our members do. Teamsters represent everything from airline pilots to zookeepers. It is a true story. We do have airline pilots, and we do have zookeepers, and we literally have every job in between. And this is one of the favorite parts of the show, where people like to hear the different jobs that Teamsters do. There's a lot of very unique jobs that Teamsters do. And the first one I want to talk about is the Cargill process. The Cargill, who processes sugar that's packed and used in food ingredients, everything from ketchup to barbecue sauce, and most of your food manufacturing use this type of sugar. Cargill members are out of Teamsters Local 455 in Denver, and they prepare and package that sugar that gets used in most foods. So from start to finish, Teamsters are part of that process. Clabber Girl baking powder. It's a old 1930s drawing of a family on the front. That is manufactured and distributed by Local 135 in Indiana. The famous label is really a good old school 1930s drawing. And for those of you that can recognize that, when next time you see that, you know that Teamsters manufactured it and distributed it. The next one is an interesting one. I get a little shout out of David Cruz from Coachella Valley Water District because he's a Giants fan. Boo to the Giants. I'm a Dodger fan. But Teamsters Local 665 members up in the Bay Area at Oracle Park, they have their valets, cashiers, and traffic directors. They provide all the essential services at Oracle Park, home of the San Francisco Giants. Again, if I were a Giant fan, I'd be more excited about it. But being a Dodger fan, we got to be loyal to our team. What are you laughing at, Mark? So, yeah, you gotta. But David Cruz, of Coachella Valley Water District, one of our newest members here, he's a Giants fan, so he's going to feel good that we're giving a little shout out to his lowly old Giants, seeing that we keep beating them here recently. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. It's another show. So with that, we'll transition into current labor news, into new news. UCLA, UC Davis academic workers have gone on strike over the treatment of the protests. The solidarity and strike actions have happened as a result. Academic workers at UCLA and UC Davis, represented by UAW Local 4811, initiated a rolling strike in solidarity with the pro-Palestine protests, highlighting violations of their rights during university crackdowns on these demonstrations. It's ironic that, regardless of where you stand on the subject, the right to protest is what it is. And if you step on people's rights and the right to protest, you're going to get protest as a result of stepping on people's rights that are trying to protest. And so there's clearly significant disruptions in the strike, starting at UC Santa Cruz and then spreading to other campuses. Occurs at a crucial academic period, obviously affecting finals and grading. And so the union's actions are aimed to cause substantial disruption until their demands are met. And clearly, the point of it is to get everybody to sit down and, with the situation there in Palestine, peace should be the option that everybody's looking for. It's peace is the best way to deal with this. Anyway, next thing, this is particularly near and dear to me. Wisconsin unions are arguing for overturning a 2011 law that ended nearly all collective bargaining agreement. It was a challenge. Unions are challenging Act 10 in Wisconsin. For those of you that don't know labor history, this is extremely important because the right for public employees to collectively bargain was not gained until the 1960s. The right for any worker to bargain collectively wasn't gained until 1934. And then it was passed and memorialized in the National Labor Relations Act in 1935. And then it wasn't until 30 plus years later that public employees were also given the right to collectively bargain state by state, not necessarily federally, but state by state. The federal government said it's okay for it to be done on a state by state basis. And so only 29 states allow collective bargaining for public employees. Wisconsin historically was the first state to actually allow collective bargaining for public employees in, I think it was 1962, 1963. And so for that law in 2011 to be passed, it was a straight up attack on public employees, teachers, and law enforcement, and a number of other public workers were obviously attacked at trying to strip their rights to collectively bargain. And so now those unions have actually taken another shot at trying to overturn that law. And the Act 10, which was passed in 2011 and caused major disruptions. I don't know if you all remember, there was these huge demonstrations where people filled the Capitol for weeks on end, and they were basically pushing back that, stripping workers of their rights to collectively bargain, was quite the step back. So now you look all these years later, and some may celebrate this. I don't know who would, but there are some people that will celebrate that now workers in Wisconsin in those classifications make far less money than they did before, as well as a lot of their benefits have been stripped. The ironic thing that happened is after the Act 10 passed, you had most of the workers in that industry that were working for public entities that their bargaining rights were stripped. They left, they quit, and they went somewhere else where they could do the job somewhere else because they weren't going to work under those conditions. And so you had this huge actual turnover in the workforce as a result of it, and they had massive shortages when it came to people performing the jobs. And if you look at the jobs in comparison, they're making substantially less today, which is 13, 14 years later, than they did then. Their argument was too heavy of a burden on tax dollars. It's not true, because what they did is they passed that law and then they gave out billions of dollars in tax breaks to Foxconn and other huge corporations. All they did is they took the money and gave it to a big corporation that didn't even actually produce the jobs they said they were going to produce. And so it was a pretty big, scam, again, for big corporations to be able to squeeze tax dollars out of a local economy, and obviously not respecting the work that's being done by public servants is pretty it's pretty disgusting. And so it's good to see that these court proceedings in Dane County are currently being the judge is overseeing it is Jacob Frost, and is considering whether to allow the lawsuit to proceed, despite the previous legislature that took on efforts to dismiss it. The judge is scrutinizing the unequal treatment of the different classes of employees under the law. So think about the unequal treatment. If you got some workers in public entities that have the right to be bargained with, and then you have other entities, other workers that don't, clearly that creates a differential and an unequal treatment. And so the equal protection argument, the union's attorneys claims that there is no rational basis for exempting some public safety workers while subjecting others to the law's restrictions, highlighting potential equal protection violations. Now, think about that. The reason why they actually carved out in Act 10, they carved out certain public safety groups like cops and some others and said, okay, well, in this go around, we're not going to attack you, so that there wasn't a pushback. And then as time went on, their benefits were eroded as well. And as now you look back and everybody regrets that, the passage of Act 10. And so the impact on workers, if the lawsuit succeeds, collective bargaining rights would be restored for all public sector workers affected by Act 10. I don't, obviously I'm a little biased on this subject, but I'm sorry, but our Constitution in America protects the ability to have a contract between people, not just people, but entities. And quite frankly, stripping millions of workers' rights to have a contract between them and their employer is just wrong. It's in our opinion, it's un-American as it can be. And so the next item on the news is the Samsung union calls for the first ever strike against after pay negotiations stall. And so the historic strike announcement was the National Samsung Electronics Union, which is NSEA, has announced a one-day strike on June 7th, marking the first ever walkout at Samsung Electronics. And so the union is representing 28,000 members, nearly a quarter of Samsung's workers in South Korea. So obviously you got workers all over the world that are jumping up and saying, hey, man, we want to be represented too. The next issue, last issue on the news I want to point out, I actually skipped this at the last one, but Boeing had actually locked out its firefighters, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they want to lockout firefighters. So I want to remind you, it's the Worker Power Hour, KCAA 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Remember, we got a live show. We got some FCC rules. We got to actually do the call letters on a regular basis so that we don't get in trouble. Right, Mark? That's right. Anyway, and then I've also told people that people have told me that they like hearing that because they feel like they're listening to a live show, and I'm all, that's because you are listening to a live show. It's not that you feel like you are; you actually are. Anyway, so it turns out that even after Boeing locked those firefighters out, that they've come back to the table and they've started to work through a number of their differences. The IAM District Lodge 751 and the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the FAA, are sitting down and trying to work through all that and try to mitigate it. The newly formed Event Review Committee includes representatives from the FAA, Boeing, and IAM District Lodge 751, which represents over 30,000 of Boeing's production workers. And so the idea is obviously to just get everybody together and build a consensus and try to solve the differences. And so with that takes me to the last part of this half hour, and that is our Teamster Advantage partner we have today. A very unique one today. For those of you that don't know, maybe just listening in for the first time, our Teamster Advantage network is comprised of more than 1,000 small businesses within the Inland Empire, as well as some in Orange County and LA. And we, we're in 26 chambers of commerce, and what we do is we offer up our membership connection between two of the local unions in the Inland Empire, which is nearly 100,000 people, which is over 30,000 members. And we advertise for them for free, and we encourage our members to buy local. We encourage our members to look through the app and identify if you're going to buy something or go to lunch or order something, or instead of going to a big box store or ordering something on the big evil Amazon, make sure that you try to do it locally, because doing something locally is going to keep more of your tax dollars in your local community versus being shuffled out to some big corporation that spans across the planet. And so us having Teamster Advantage partners on our radio show, we're always excited to have somebody live. Live. You like that for this one? Have someone alive, because we have a very unique Teamster Advantage partner. It's a new Teamster Advantage partner, right, Mark? Yeah, very new. And I'll just say the joke, I guess, if I use this Teamster Advantage partner, it's my last one that I'm using. Right. So why don't you introduce yourself and you're Anthony, right?
Yes, Randy, and I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. And yes, I would be the last one to let you down.
Literally. I love it. This is great. I do not want to use you as a partner, but I get you. I just might have to at some point.
Well,
so what do you do? Because everybody's probably trying to figure it out.
Well,
right?
My name is Anthony Hernandez. I'm the owner of Emerson Bartlett Memorial Chapel. We have a location in Yucaipa as well as Redlands. I'm a licensed funeral director in the state of California. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I think I just passed my 20th anniversary. I sit on the board of directors of Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce with Mark Orr, who brought me into the Teamster Advantage, and I was just invited on the show today to talk a little bit about my business and what we could do to help with Teamster Advantage.
Yeah, so you're a funeral director. This
Yes,
is the end of the road. In other words, this is the last for everybody that we have. And this is unique. I think you're the first. This is our first funeral director in all the businesses that we have. Is that correct? All right. So I love it. I think this gives us a little bit of humor to a serious situation, because obviously for many people that lose a loved one, at a certain time, at a tragic time, and the stress of that, it's a hard situation to figure out. And it's a tough situation to sort out. And then obviously there's an economic burden to it. So having a discount there is obviously helpful to a family that's in need at that moment. And the great thing is we now have one of those added to the mix when it comes to the Teamster Advantage Network. So what's the discount that you offer the members?
So going back, like you said, is yes, we meet with a lot of families. Death can come suddenly and put a financial burden on a family. They're expected, for services rendered, whether through our firm, a cemetery, to pay those fees up front. And that can sometimes be, $7,000+. I know most people don't just have that sitting in the bank. So what we do offer is what's called advanced planning or pre-need, and that is where somebody can make arrangements prior to death. They
Yeah, planning your death.
Exactly, and again, that's something most people don't want to talk about. But when you're faced with the reality of it, it does.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen 100%
It's going to
to
happen.
everybody.
Absolute certainty. It's coming.
Yep. The day that they find a cure, I'm out of a job. But I don't think that's going to happen. So what we're offering is a $300 discount to anyone who comes in that is with Teamster Advantage off of their pre-need. So already on what would be a discounted offering that they can make payments on, it would lock the prices into the day that they sign the contract. I've had folks that have passed away 20 years after they've done their policy, coming from 1996, 2000, and just from what the cost was then to now is, 100% increase. So with that discount would also, help that financial burden as well. So that's, again, something we're offering. If you come into either of our offices in Yucaipa or Redlands, you have proof that you're with Teamster Advantage, we will automatically offer that discount.
So I'm not allowed to get buried in my backyard?
Unfortunately, the state of California would frown upon that.
So what state will let me do that?
Possibly Colorado. They seem to be unregulated and on many fronts.
In this area?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, back in the day, they just buried you out in the North 40, right?
Yep.
You can't do that now. So,
California's a very regulated state, so there's lots of inspections, things that we go through. We
don't want a bunch of dead bodies laying around, right?
No. We actually just got inspected a month ago, and both of our locations passed 100%. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I live in Yucaipa. I actually drive by, when you come down Yucaipa Boulevard, I drive by your establishment on a regular basis.
Yep, right there at the top of the hill.
I turn around and I look at it and I always go, I hope I don't see that soon. Yeah, it's true. You won't see it. So
yeah.
I don't know. I have a spiritual belief that I'll see it shortly. Right, at some point you'll see it, and then you won't see much after that. So.
And again, it's a place I understand that nobody wants to be at. It's a funeral home, but I encourage anyone to come and visit any of the locations. You could talk to myself, my wife Leah. We have a great staff there, and I'm always willing to answer any questions about my profession.
Can you tell a funny story that's clean enough to?
Well,
and not some of the ones we heard offline, because those probably are too graphic for
I don't know
live
if it's
radio.
Funny, but maybe one of the things that draws me into my line of work.
Anybody ever wake up after
no,
all those stories you hear of somebody getting taken down there and they're actually alive? You ever had that happen?
No, I think when I first started, I went and picked a gentleman who passed away up, and he did let out a breath that it did freak me out, but nothing other than that. Nothing. It's
you
pretty
were saying
quiet.
Goodbye. Right?
Yeah. I think the interesting part of my job is we've had a gentleman who was a Santa Claus for many years, and when he passed away, his wish was to be full Santa regalia, and that's what we did. We've had somebody who was a pirate. We'll honor pretty much anyone's wishes as long as it's within the bounds of the law.
It's their last act of defiance or whatever it may be, right? So
exactly,
and that's I joking aside, I think that's a good thing. In other words, honoring the wishes of those individuals, those last things that you do.
Correct.
It's really interesting whenever I'm sure you deal with fights happening and people arguing over money and stuff like that.
Sure.
I remember I had a situation once that, I got put in the middle of it right in front of a funeral director, and I was like, I'm not paying for this. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. They're paying. Anyway, that's a long story for another show. But I'm sure you run into these crazy situations. That aside, the point is respecting the wishes of those individuals that have passed.
Yes,
it's pretty important. I was having this conversation with my best friend many years ago, and when his grandfather died, it really stuck in his head that the way all of their belongings was just kind of being who wants this, who wants that, and it's just being kind of tossed around. And, you get someone who carries a quarter in their pocket for 50 years. A quarter had this tremendous amount of significance to them. And then somebody holds it up at the end and says, who wants the quarter? No, man, there's a lot of meaning. We should spend a little bit more time respecting the wishes of those who have passed, because they did impact us most of the time in a pretty good way the time that they're there. So it's great that you actually do that.
We celebrate birthdays and weddings, and I always say, when someone passes, it may not be for everyone. Some people do choose a simple cremation, but what is simple? I say it can be anything that you want. And we have a large chapel, and I always encourage people to celebrate their loved ones. That's what I get out of it, and that's the enjoyment of my job. It is sad. It can be depressing. You see horrible things, but you also see the good in people, and like I said, that's where my passion lies, and why I've been able to do this for 20 years.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Anthony, and thank you for the partnership. We like having new partners, old partners, all these. We've had a couple partners that have been on for been partners for 6-7 years. Obviously, we've had some new ones come on, and we'd love to get them on the show and share, just share the show and explain to everybody what we're doing with the Teamster Advantage Network, and keep up the great work. And all joking aside, we appreciate what you do to bring those final days together in a as much of a positive way as you can. And we really appreciate the fact that you offer up a discount to close that out, too, for everybody.
Thank you. It's our pleasure to be in a partnership with Teamsters Advantage. We'll help out any way we can. And if anyone has any questions, they can visit us at emersonbartlett.com. Thank you.
This is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, longtime organizer, first-time radio host. Going to break. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Inland Empire, for listening to KCAA Radio.
Are you looking for a good union job? The Inland Empire's 14,000 member strong Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get working people trained and placed in open positions in public service clerical work and in jobs in the logistics industry. This is a new opportunity to advance your career and raise standards across the region. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. The Donald Trump hush money jury has been dismissed for the day. Earlier in the afternoon, the jury rang the bell twice during deliberations with two requests. The first note asked for the National Enquirer publisher David Pecker's testimony about a phone call with Trump, Pecker's testimony regarding Playboy model Kara McDougal, Michael Cohen, and Pecker's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting. Yasmin Masujian is outside the courthouse with the content of the second note from the jury.
The second note was they want to get the jury instructions reread to them. Judge Juan Merchan has now said to them they will reread those jury instructions, which we know now will take at least an hour and 15 minutes tomorrow morning when they resume court. When it comes to those four questions, it's going to take at least 30 minutes or so, the judges said, to read through those transcripts. Remember, they have a laptop with them in that deliberation room. They don't have transcripts on that laptop. They have the evidence on that laptop that has been submitted.
Trump is charged with falsifying records before the 2016 election to hide payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Lisa Taylor, NBC News Radio.
More than 80 million Americans depend on AM radio each month for news, weather, and emergency information. A new bill in Congress would make sure AM radio remains in cars, because when cell and internet services are down, this free service could be your only lifeline. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Was your car involved in an accident or just need help with dents? All Magic Paint and Body Collision Centers. In business for over 30 years. Their highly trained staff and certified technicians and friendly staff are the best in the business and treat each car as if it was their own. All Magic Paint and Body Collision Centers are family owned. and offer state-of-the-art equipment and tools to ensure optimum results. They use the latest technology in computerized color matching and specialize in frame repairs. With their modern laser measuring systems, they're OEM certified, and they have 4 locations to serve you. All Magic Paint and Body Collision Centers offer rental car assistance with free drop-off and pickup services too, and their work has a lifetime guarantee. All Magic Paint and Body Collision Centers are in Norco, Eastvale, Moreno Valley, and in Fontana. Call them at 1-800-61-MAGIC. That's 1-800-61-MAGIC. All Magic Paint and Body Collision Centers. 1-800-61-MAGIC. All Magic Paint and Auto Body says, drive carefully.
Our sponsor, Applied Earthworks, serves the Inland Valley in Southern California for over 24 years, specializing in cultural resource management, an expert in archaeology, paleontology, architectural history, and historic preservation, making it possible to build for the future without sacrificing our cultural heritage. Learn more and see employment opportunities at appliedearthworks.com. Progress and preservation. Applied Earthworks supports our veterans.
This is KCAA.
Welcome to the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, a brand new show about labor and worker issues. The host of the show is Randy Corrigan, Secretary, Treasurer, and Principal Office and leader of Teamsters 1932, one of the largest public sector labor unions on the West Coast, representing workers in government and non-sworn law enforcement personnel. Randy Corrigan is a 30-year Teamster who first became involved in the labor movement by volunteering his time as an organizer with the Teamsters Union at the age of 21. Since then, he's helped thousands organize, mobilize, and achieve bargaining rights. He accomplished this by spending countless hours with brave men and women all over Southern California, in their living rooms, on the picket line, to bring workers towards victory. This is the Worker Power Hour. And now here's the host of the show, Randy Corrigan.
All right. We're back on the back half of the hour. Thanks for staying in there and hanging in. It's the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan, KCAA 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Thanks for getting me the right intro this time, Mark. Appreciate it. We changed the name of the show after about a month and a half or something, from Teamster Roundup to the Worker Power Hour. And so, our first year is going to be testing and trying a bunch of different things. And apparently we just happened to queue up the wrong intro, so appreciate it. Mark's like, why are you beating me up? You got to have fun with it. If you can't roll with it, you don't know how to deal with challenges, right? So no big deal. Hey, so there's something significant that Teamsters Local 1932 and its membership did last week, and I want to spend actually the back half of this hour talking about how important and significant it is, because it's a subject that has really kind of left the normal mainstream discussion for workers in the last 3 or 4 decades, to a degree that it's become this so-called unrealistic something to achieve that's very unrealistic. And we don't agree with that, never have, and it really circles around affordable health care. And the system with health care has created really unaffordable situations in a lot of cases. But when you're in collective bargaining, there's very creative ways of solving this subject. And I like to define affordable health care as not just how much your health care costs today or doesn't cost you, and it costs the employer, but secondarily, how your health care is managed up until you retire, as well as beyond retirement, and quite frankly, until you meet Anthony, who was here earlier on the earlier part of the show, who works at the mortuary. And I think that having good, affordable health care shouldn't be too unrealistic of an expectation to have affordable health care until you're in the box or in the urn or whatever it is that Anthony's going to do with you, whatever your final wishes are. And unfortunately, corporate America has on 2 platforms created problems when it comes to, number one, the affordability of it, corporate America's ability to really ruin the healthcare industry in many things that are now for profit that should not be for profit. and making the cost skyrocket to an unaffordable level. And then second, creating a narrative that workers should pay for their health care and not employers or another system. And the reality is everybody should be entitled to health care. And clearly we don't have universal health care in America, but we do have employers that can pay for health care. And so I preface all this discussion on what happened so significantly last week, which was the Board of Trustees for the Teamsters Local 1932 Health and Welfare Trust and Retiree Fund. I know it's a long, long title, but it's a fund that has two trusts built into one another, which is an active fund that helps manage the benefits for thousands of employees work at the County of San Bernardino, as well as a separate fund that manages the retirement benefits of employees that retired from San Bernardino County that are in our bargaining unit. And the Board of Trustees approved something extremely significant based on the funding levels. And for those of you that don't know, we built a health and welfare plan a few years ago, and that plan has built up reserves. There's a lot of ways that you can be creative in your ability to build up reserves. And we built what we call a retirement component to health and welfare, which is what happens to me when I retire. Maybe I have an early retirement formula or a date that I can retire when I'm 55 or 57 or 60 or 62, pre-65, because when I hit 65, for the most part, I'm Medicare eligible. So I'm going to have benefits on Medicare. Then there's a post-65 benefit that is a Medicare Part B. It's a supplement to Medicare that helps deal with the costs if you are participating in a plan like that monthly. And so it's what we call a post-65 benefit. And what the trustees approved on top of the already retirement benefit, if you retire pre-65, that you get a benefit from the time you retire of a certain amount per month, which is $750 per month to help pay your premiums until you turn 65. And at 65, the benefit terminates because you go on to Medicare. Now, what the trustees approved as of January of 2025 is that now you will get a post-65 benefit in addition to you having a spousal pre-65 benefit. So if you retire and you need to cover your spouse as well and you're married, I actually found out that there was a higher percentage of people not married than there was a percentage of people married. When I was doing all the studies for this, I was shocked by it. I realized how many people that age don't want to be married. And so having a spouse benefit, if you are married, is important to how much it's going to cost you and the definition of affordable health care. So the significance in this is there's this misnomer that county employees or state employees or public employees have all these incredibly rich benefits and then they retire with these exorbitant amounts of money, which is not true. But whatever. There's a narrative that's created because they want to reduce how much people make, and the other thing they want to do is strip away those benefits. And when we first helped the workers in San Bernardino County become Teamsters in 2015, what was unaffordable by a far stretch was their health care. Their health care was costing them, many families, $400 and $500 a month in how much they were paying in addition to the premiums. And they're in this case, they're working for a government agency that provides health care benefits to people that don't make enough money to have health care benefits. And ironically, those very same people were standing in line for the same benefit in which they're helping the general public gain. Yet public employees are villainized as if they are, making $1 million a year and getting these crazy lucrative pensions that, there's a handful of people that have, I guess, manipulated the system. And for the hundreds of thousands that are just getting an average pension, there is only one for every 100,000 that are at that super high number, and they use that to make everything else look bad, as if everybody's getting $300,000 a year from a retirement plan, which is not true. So that villainization created an erosion of benefits over a long period of time, and then the workers at San Bernardino County didn't have a retiree medical component on top of it. They didn't have affordable health care, nor did they have a retiree medical component. And what we noticed in 2015 was that workers would, let's say they get to their late 50s, early 60s, run into a health issue and wanted to work till they're 65, but something forced them into retirement, usually a health issue. And doing my job of now more than 30 years, I have seen this happen thousands of times, where you are on pace, you want to work till you're 62, you want to work till you're 65, you may want to even work till you're 70, but something happens. A heart attack happens, a stroke happens, an accident, something happens, and health gets in the way, and somebody's forced to retire. And if they don't have a mechanism or a system or a process, then guess what? Boom, if they're in a low-paying job on top of not having good benefit structure and then not having a retiree medical component, they're literally forced into poverty as a result of a health decision, a situation where it was far beyond their control. And so in 2015, we saw how difficult that was on literally thousands of workers, and we proposed to build a system going forward. And now we look at where we are in 2024, and in less than 10 years, we've not only been able to help make healthcare affordable. And so now if you're a new employee at San Bernardino County and you have no idea, and you're coming into one of our bargaining units, if you're going into one of the other bargaining units, it looks very different. Healthcare is extremely expensive. But if you're going into our bargaining units and you get hired in the units in which we represent, which is 8 of them, and you look at the options, you actually have an option that is zero cost out of your pocket for the premium. It's 100% paid by the employer. It's got if you go to the doctor, it's it's a little bit more. It's not $10. It's like $25. Some other things have a little bit of a upfront deductible, unlike the other plan. But if you choose the premium plan, it's actually affordable now. It's just a little bit of money out of your pocket to help pay the premium as compared to before. And clearly there was no retiree component. In other words, if you retired early and or you retired post 65, there was nothing to wrap around your health to make sure that health issues didn't put you in poverty. You could have worked for the employer for 35, 40 years, and guess what? You're driven into poverty because of these decisions. And so I give all that as a kind of like a backdrop to what I'm explaining, because since we've announced this, no different than when in 2019 when we bargained a contract that we had bargained and it changed the trajectory of the cost for healthcare. We had people in tears that were calling and really changing, they were calling and identifying how much their life had changed as a result of having affordable healthcare. And now people that say they're in their 20s or 30s may not be paying attention to this, but all of us that creeped into our 40s and 50s and maybe older, all of a sudden this issue becomes way more prioritized. And I want to tell a couple stories of why it always was a priority to me. And that was because I started as a Teamster. I actually worked on a Teamster dock when I was a teenager, and before I turned 18 and was able to get a legitimate Teamster job. In other words, I could officially work at that company and get a check from them, because you had to be 18 to work there. When I went to work and became a Teamster at that location, within a week of me going to work there, a number of old guys, I call them old now. They were probably younger than I am now, but when I was 18, I viewed them as old. Those individuals sat me down in the break room and literally borderline threatened my life if I ever gave up their retiree medical or did anything to their retirement plans or messed up their health care. And in a funny way, basically said, we see you're new. We do this with all new people coming in, and we want to make sure that don't you ever do anything to cut our retiree health care. Don't you ever do anything to reduce our pension, and don't you ever do anything to minimize the cost or to hurt the cost of our health care, because you're going to get old like us one day, and you're going to need that. And it always stuck in my mind. I can still picture what break room I was sitting at and what table I was sitting at when they did it to me. And, I kind of looked at them, and, I was a little aggressive at the time. And my first thing I thought is, all right, maybe we're going to fight. All right, cool. And, joking aside, then I realized, well, this is serious. Like, these guys have a lot invested, and it stuck with me. It always stuck with me. And I think, somebody asked me to tell this story, and I think it's the reason why it's important to tell the story is we're not doing a good enough job in this generation of explaining it to the next generation that's just starting on why retirement vehicles like this are very important. And for me, it was very impactful, which is now, because of that conversation, I've been able to, I went to work for the union when I was very young, and I've been able to bargain contracts and always prioritized retirement as a result of those few guys that cornered me in a break room. And obviously I had a great relationship with them for the entire time I worked there, and respected the fact that they were very assertive. But the reason why I want to share this story is this is very possible. And most importantly, people say, oh, public employees now on the tax dime to pay, have your retiree medical paid for, and I don't have that. Every bit of this program was actually built out of their own money being the workers' money. The workers diverted a certain percentage of their salary to pay for it. It's all self-funded, 100% of it, self-funded. And you heard that correctly. The reduction of their healthcare costs, the ability to have a retiree medical component, and a pre-65 and a post-65, all done through collective bargaining, number one, pooling your money and your resources, number two, and diverting your own money. So what we did backing up some time in 17 and 18 is we surveyed thousands of people and asked, does this make sense? Does that, in different scenarios? And we really got an idea of where people were. And essentially ultimately we asked a very simple question. Would you make 50 cents less an hour on average, 50 cents or 60 cents less an hour to have these benefits? And people by 80 or 90%, yes, absolutely. And at all age groups, at age ranges, when you got down into the lower years, as far as younger years, they were more likely to want them themselves. And so you have this group of public employees who have taken their own money, put it into a fund, and created affordability for their future, their present, which is their healthcare costs, and second, their future, which is their retirement vehicles. That is going to completely change their trajectory down the road. Because I understand if you're listening to this and you're in your early 20s, you may not, listen, no big deal. Look, man, I still think I'm 25 in some days, and I'm just shocked that I'm 52. And I don't know what happened. Time blew by, and guess what? It's here. Everybody told me that was going to happen. I didn't believe them, and guess what? It's here, and now I'm the old guy in the room trying to explain to the young guys. This is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corgan, KCAA 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Anyway, the point is it's important to prioritize this discussion and make it to where people understand that it is achievable. It's something significant that happened after that vote was held last week for the Board of Trustees, after looking at the financial projections, said we can turn on these benefits and they can be available from this point to on. We picked up the phone and actually called somebody by the name of Jack. Jack is on a bargaining team at San Bernardino County, and he was post 65 while he was on the bargaining team, and he was somebody who actually voted in favor of building a system even if it didn't have a post 65 benefit. Him and other people knew that it was important to get the benefit started and actually get it moving, even if it meant they wouldn't individually get the benefit at first. And they may never realize the benefit, that it was important for the next generation to get it started and to sacrifice to get it started for the next generation so that they won't run into those same struggles when they hit 57, 60, 62, 65. And I can tell you, for us, that was a very good conversation to have. And we said, thank you. People like you made a decision to personally sacrifice, knowing it was better for the greater good. Clearly, it's come back full circle, and Jack is going to be able to benefit from this benefit. And it goes to show that if you do the right thing, and you have patience, and you have a plan, and you have collective bargaining, and you have these sorts of benefits, or you're trying to achieve them, you may not achieve them all at once. You may not, you may just get a little piece of it at a time. And it took us years. But when you look back, I look back after last Wednesday's meeting, and I realized that literally in a 5-year span, we were able to go from zero to this and literally change the trajectory of tens of thousands of workers' lives over the next couple decades. That is very, very significant. I'm being told, Mark's telling me I got 2 minutes left. It's powerful. It's a game changer for workers. And for those of us that are in our 40s or 50s and are starting to think about, okay, at some point I got to pull the plug. What is the date? When does it look? What does it look like? And how is it going to happen? One of the biggest factors is how much your healthcare is going to cost. And if that pathway is dealt with and managed in the future is handled, guess what? It's going to make for an easier transition, and you are not going to be forced into a negative situation. So I probably only got about a minute left, and I want to close out the show. I want to thank everybody for listening in to this portion. I can tell you I'm so proud of our members. I'm proud of our staff and board and everybody that was able to get us to this point. And we got here because of worker power. And what are we doing to build worker power? You probably see our buses and our billboards and our advertisement and what we're doing with the Teamster Advantage Network. We're making sure everybody understands, thank a Teamster. Talk with your family. Talk with your friends. Talk with a neighbor on how to build worker power, because worker power is what leads to these types of benefits. Longtime organizer, first-time radio host, Randy Corgan with the Worker Power Hour, signing off.
KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Publisher David Pecker and ex-Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. They also asked the judge to read the jury instructions once again. Trump could face prison time if he's found guilty. He's charged with 34 counts, and each charge carries a maximum sentence of 4 years. Those counts would probably run concurrently, meaning he could see 4 years total. Trump is charged with falsifying records before the 2016 election to hide payments to a